Hey everybody, welcome back to the Weather Farm. I know it's been a little while since our last video, but now is the perfect time for us to jump right back in because the weather is about to get very active. We have three big stories for you in this video: a major pattern shift that is going to bring record-breaking cold to the United States for the last half of this week, a return of severe weather that could bring damaging winds, large hail, and even the threat of tornadoes, and the tropics, they are heating up fast. Our next hurricane could already be brewing out in the Atlantic. So let's dive in with what's happening right now. As we begin our video on our Wednesday evening, we are watching an area of low pressure that is centered across parts of Ontario, and it is a very powerful low pressure system for this time of the year. And yes, that is even snow that is mixing in with this system. Look at that blue 540 decameter line. We usually watch that line in the winter to determine where we're going to see the rain and snow line form, and this line is very far south for this time of the year, indicating just how cold this air and its origins are, that we are actually mixing snow across parts of Western Ontario here at the beginning of September. That's also bringing showers to parts of Illinois, Michigan, Indiana. That will continue to move east into our Thursday. Out west, we are watching an area of low pressure over Colorado. This is going to provide enough instability, and with that counterclockwise flow, it is going to bring moisture up from the Gulf and going to ignite some thunderstorms here across the Central Plains. And we're watching a tropical system down here in the Pacific. As that continues to move to the north, will it impact the weather for the southern Central Plains this upcoming weekend with the possibility of flooding rain? Still a lot to be determined on the exact path and track of this, so we'll bring you the latest in our next video. Across the southeast, we see an area of high pressure off the southeast coast of Georgia that is bringing quiet, calm conditions. As we look at our 500 millibar level, this is what's really driving. We see that northwesterly flow coming in from Canada, and it's bringing the air from northern parts of Canada all the way down to the Great Lakes and to the Ohio Valley. And as we go into the weekend, we're going to see yet another front come through Friday night into Saturday with a reinforcing jab of colder air for the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. This is going to keep our temperatures much below normal for this part of the country over the next 4 to 5 days. As we see this ridge out in the west, and as we get into our Sunday, it starts to move a little to the east, bringing warmth back to the plains by the time we get to Monday. Just a sign of what is to come in the next several days. But with these northwesterly winds, this is where we're going to watch, in that area of low pressure in Colorado, we're going to watch this area around Kansas and Oklahoma for the threat of severe weather over the next 24 to 48 hours. And if we look at our temperature anomaly map, we see the eastern half of the United States is impacted by this cooler than normal temperature flow, with temperatures 15, 20, even up to 30 degrees below seasonal norms across parts of Ontario into the Dakotas and Minnesota. While out west, we are watching temperatures 15, 20 degrees above our seasonal norms through this upcoming weekend. Washington State even flirting with triple digits over the last few days. That's going to continue, but by next week, we do expect that pattern to change and temperatures return to normal. Here's our temperature loop over the next 48 to 96 hours. We see those blues indicating sub-freezing temperatures across parts of Ontario, even making their way into Minnesota and the UP of Michigan. I would not be surprised that by Saturday and Sunday morning this upcoming weekend that we see frost and freeze watches and possibly warnings across the northern tier of the United States. We could even see those extending out to the Dakotas. Whereas out west, temperatures are very warm, 80s and 90s, and triple digits will rule the day. Across the southeast, we're seeing warm conditions as well with that southwesterly flow of air across the southern states. And this is confirmed by the Climate Prediction Center, who for the next 6 to 10 days, so this takes us into the end of next week, much of the eastern half of the United States is expected to have below normal temperatures, while we see the above normal temperatures extending from the Four Corners region up through the northern Rockies, making their way now into the plains. So places like North Dakota, where you could be flirting with freezing temperatures this upcoming weekend, by the time we get to next week, you could be above normal as that ridge slowly moves to the east. And out west, across parts of California, we could see below normal temperatures for next week. As I mentioned, we are watching the threat of severe weather areas of Kansas into Missouri for the greatest threat of severe weather with these storms. But by the time we get to our Thursday, that greatest threat moves into the Appalachians up through New York. We don't expect any strong storms. Mainly strong winds and heavy rain will be the likely impacts as we make our way into our Thursday. So let's take a look at our future radar. As we go through our Wednesday night into Thursday, we're watching those showers make their way through the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley. Strong storms out of Kansas into Missouri will weaken overnight. Here's that tropical system that I mentioned. It's making its way north into the Baja of California. Where it goes, still to be determined. But by Thursday afternoon, we're watching with that next round of cold air being funneled down. Strong storms could be possible with heavy rain across the Dakotas into Minnesota. And this is going to be a cold rain. Temperatures here are going to be in the upper 30s to low 40s as this rain is falling on our Friday morning. That makes its way east all around that area of low pressure just to the south of Hudson Bay. So let's put everything into motion and take it through the weekend. We watch that snow, and that snow could accumulate in those grassy areas on our Thursday across parts of Western Ontario. we still have that northwesterly flow. That area of low pressure continues to spin and bring storms and precipitation around it. We see areas of precipitation moving across the southeast in association with that low that moves out of Colorado into the southeast. And here comes that tropical system, where it goes, and it's going to spread some moisture into Texas by the time we get to our Sunday into our Monday. And how far north it goes, how much pull it has with that counterclockwise rotation off of the Gulf, we'll be watching that for the threat of flooding rains across the south this coming weekend. The next area of concern that we are watching, speaking of those tropics, is an area of organized storms that is out in the main development region for hurricanes and tropical systems this time of the year. It's taking that similar path that Aaron and Fernand did as it makes its way toward the Leeward Islands. It's still a few days away, but it does have a 60% or greater chance of development into a tropical system by the time we get towards the weekend. And it is running into an area that has very low wind shear and very favorable sea surface temperatures for further development. So this is something that we are definitely going to be watching, and we'll bring you an update as we get a little more information on it in one of our later videos this week. But there are hints that this could impact the United States by the time we get to the middle of next week. And speaking of those sea surface temperatures, after Aaron and Fernand have moved through, those temperatures are now warming back up into the upper 20s to near 30 for your sea surface temperatures. And in the Gulf, we have temperatures 30 to 31 degrees centigrade. Prime conditions for development of tropical systems over the next several days. And after we get through next weekend, our weather pattern is going to change. The cold and that high pressure is going to move out on our Monday. We're going to watch the return of scattered showers to the Pacific Northwest as we have a trough beginning to dig into that part of the country. And we watch yet another trough, this time not making its way into the Great Lakes, but it's going to skirt the far northeast by the time we get to Wednesday or Thursday. And we have a ridge building across the Central Plains with southerly winds that's really going to warm this area of the country up. Temperatures that were in the 30s and 40s this coming weekend could be in the mid-90s by the time we get to next weekend. So a lot to change. And that is also consistent with the 8 to 14 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, which now moves most of the United States from Utah all the way through the Ohio and Tennessee valleys down through Florida and Texas with above normal temperatures as we begin the middle of next week into next. As I mentioned, we'll have a trough that moves in, but it's going to skirt the northeast by next weekend. That area will be below normal in temperatures. And out west, we're going to see trough digging across the southwest that's going to bring below normal temperatures for Nevada into California as we end and get to the middle of September. In terms of our precipitation, with that trough digging into the Pacific Northwest, we're going to watch for the increase of rainfall across that part of the country. So we would expect above normal precipitation for the 8 to 14 day period. Across the south, where you've been impacted by flooding rains across parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, below normal precipitation, as well as through the Great Lakes. And then the question mark is going to be how close to the United States does that tropical system that is moving its way through the Atlantic, how close does it get to the United States, and does it impact the United States? Right now, it could be like Aaron and bring some heavy rain to the coastal areas, so we're watching that for the possibility of above normal precipitation by the time we get to the middle of next week. I want to take us through some temperatures over the next several days. As we go into our Saturday morning, maybe a little bit warmer across the Dakotas with added cloud cover in the mid-40s, but across Minnesota, Western Ontario, especially into Saskatchewan and in Western Manitoba, we could see our first freeze of the season across those parts, and that makes its way a little bit further south and east as we make our way to Sunday morning. Most of northern Minnesota likely to see their first freeze Sunday morning. In terms of our high temperatures for our Thursday, cool across the Great Lakes, 60s, 70s through the Ohio Valley into the northeast, still 90s and triple digits for Texas across the southern tier of the United States. Out west, as we've mentioned, temperatures there are in the 90s to triple digits. And that pattern is going to continue as we go into our Friday, Saturday, and into our Sunday. But you start to see that core of the colder air starting to migrate to the east. So now it's eastern Ontario into Quebec with high temperatures in the mid-40s for our Sunday. Still in the 60s across the Great Lakes, 70s to the south, 80s in the Ohio Valley. But out west, we're starting to cool down as well. 80s and 90s for parts of Washington State and Oregon instead of the 90s and 100s. Even out in the deserts, you're staying in the 100 to 105 range as we get to our Sunday. And as we get to Tuesday, as I mentioned, we're going to start to see that return of those southerly winds across the Central Plains. That's going to raise those temperatures into the mid-80s and low 90s for Nebraska into Kansas. Out west across parts of Washington and Oregon, where you're going to have that trough unsettled weather with showers and storms. Temperatures there are going to be in the 60s and 70s. We are warming across the northeast, 70s, even some 80s making their way up through the Carolinas. And as we get towards our Wednesday, that warmth continues to spread east. 80s returning to the Ohio Valley, even into southern Michigan. 90s for Texas and the Central Plains, but out west, parts of Nevada could be in the 6s, as well as Idaho into western Montana. So here's the bottom line. September is starting off with a bang. Record-breaking cold, the return of severe storms, and the tropics are heating up. If you haven't already, subscribe, click that bell icon so you can be notified when we have another video ready with the latest on the tropics or the record-breaking cold temperatures for the United States. Let me know in the comments, what's the forecast like for the areas where you're watching from? Thank you so much for watching The Weather Farm. I'll see you back here in our next video on Friday morning. Have a great day.